Evening, wanderers. Mr. Wendigo here. Pull up a chair. Get close to that fire, you're gonna need it. Tonight we're heading to Arroyo Seco, New Mexico. A wide spot in the road where the Sangre de Cristo mountains rise like broken teeth, where buffalo graze on land that remembers older names, and where the river bends in ways the old Pueblo people learned to avoid, where the elders still won't go after dark. The young folks in Arroyo Seco, they thought they knew better, thought a roof under the stars meant freedom, thought those old warnings were just stories their grandparents told to keep them scared. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Sometimes the best nights become your last memories. Sometimes you don't get memories at all. Just a whistle in the dark, and something that answers back. I can't wait to see what was waiting for them by the river. This is your late night creature feature. The Whistling Bones of Arroyo Seco. Chapter 1. Kings of the Concrete. The summer of 1985 in Arroyo Seco meant freedom measured in urethane wheels and stolen beer. It meant long days skating the plaza and Taos until the cops ran you off, then racing back to catch the sunset from the roof of Miles Hondo's rented house. It meant the smell of grip tape and sunscreen, the sound of boards slapping pavement, and nights so clear the Milky Way looked close enough to touch. For Miles, it meant finally belonging somewhere. He was 18, big for his age, with dark hair that fell in his eyes and hands permanently stained with rock dust from his father's stone shop. 3 months ago, Arroyo Seco had been just another name on a map, another place his dad Paige dragged him to for work. But then he'd met the Loveless brothers, and everything changed. Tyler Loveless was the same age as Miles, lean and sun-browned, with a gap-toothed grin and calluses on his palms from hammering nails alongside his father's construction crew. He'd shown up at the stone shop one afternoon looking for gravel, saw Miles's Powell Peralta deck leaning against the office wall, and that was it. "You skate?" Tyler had asked. Miles nodded. "Plaza tomorrow," Tyler said. 6 a.m., before it gets hot. Miles had been part of the crew ever since. J-Rod was Tyler's twin, though you wouldn't know it from personality. Where Tyler was easy smiles and dumb jokes, J-Rod ran sharp quick with a comeback, first to spot a good line, last to back down from anything. He worked summer maintenance up at Taos Ski Valley, hiking the mountain in boots to check lift cables and clear trails, coming back down with stories about finding elk skulls and weird tracks in the snowmelt. His real name was James Rodriguez Loveless, but nobody called him that. J-Rod suited him, better hard consonants, no softness. Then there was Tay-Tay, the youngest at 18, still baby-faced and desperate to prove otherwise. He was unemployed, spending his days tagging along with whichever brother would let him, practicing kickflips in Tyler's driveway until his ankles swelled. The older boys ragged on him constantly, but they always made sure he had a spot in the truck, always saved him a beer when they cracked the stash. That's how brothers worked. The house Miles and his dad rented sat at the edge of town, a low adobe structure with vigas sticking out like ribs and a flat roof accessible by an exterior wooden staircase. It had been refinished recently, clean white walls inside, new tile in the kitchen, fresh stucco outside. Paige Hondo paid rent to Tyler's father every month, cash in a white envelope, no questions asked about why the place sat empty for so long before they moved in. What Paige didn't know, what Miles didn't know until Tyler mentioned it one night on the roof, was that 10 years ago, the second story of that house had burned. Not a kitchen fire like people said. Something else. Something that started low in the walls and burned hottest on the riverside. Flames crawling up like they had intention. The fire department had arrived to find the top floor gone, just charred beams stabbing at the sky and smoke that carried voices. Tyler's grandfather had overseen the renovation himself, tore down what was left of the second story, sealed the interior, refinished everything, made it clean, made it quiet. The only thing he kept was the staircase, the one that used to lead to the second floor and now simply delivered you onto the flat roof. He said it was historical, said it gave the place character. Tyler thought he was full of shit, but he didn't say so to his grandfather's face. Old man Lovelace didn't joke about much, especially not that house. Still, the roof became their kingdom. During the school year, they'd hit it every weekend, Friday and Saturday nights, sleeping bags spread under the stars, boombox playing Twisted Sister and Van Halen until the batteries died. But summer they lived up there. Every single night from June through August, the four of them would climb those wooden stairs with their contraband and their dreams, talking about girls and bands and whether they'd ever get good enough to turn pro. Tyler had built a plywood ramp in his backyard, pieced together from scraps his dad brought home from job sites. It was ugly, warped 2x4s and mismatched plywood with more splinters than paint, but it worked. They'd session it in the afternoons when the heat got brutal, practicing kickflips until their legs shook. Tay-Tay had landed his first clean one 2 weeks ago and wouldn't shut up about it. J-Rod could do them in his sleep but acted like they were no big deal. Tyler's were solid, but he wanted them higher. Miles was still working on commitment. He could flip the board but kept landing with his weight too far back, shooting it out from under him. Most days, though, they'd pile into J-Rod's beat-to-hell Datsun pickup and head into Taos. The plaza was their spot, specifically the 6-stair gap on the north side, where the old adobe met the newer concrete. It wasn't huge, but it was technical, and landing anything down it felt like victory. They'd skate until shop owners yelled at them or the cops rolled by, then hit the side streets, curbs, banks, whatever looked skatable. Sometimes they'd stop at the Circle K for Slurpees and nachos that tasted like cardboard and regret. Sometimes they'd swing by the actual skate shop and drool over decks they couldn't afford. J-Rod was saving for a Santa Cruz with the screaming hand graphic. Tyler wanted a Vision Street Wear Gator. Miles would have been happy with new wheels. His were coned to hell, flat-spotted from bad landings. Tay-Tay just wanted anything that wasn't a hand-me-down. That Saturday, the last normal day they'd ever have, they hit the plaza hard. The sun beat down merciless, heat shimmering off the pavement, but they didn't care. Miles finally landed a decent kickflip on flat ground, and Tyler went absolutely apeshit, slapping his back so hard he nearly ate concrete. J-Rod nodded once, which was basically a standing ovation from him. Even Tay-Tay cheered, though he'd been landing them for weeks. They got kicked out around noon by a guy in a bolo tie who threatened to call the sheriff. J-Rod told him to go ahead. They'd be gone before anyone showed up anyway. They were. Lunch was gas station burritos from the Allsup's questionable meat wrapped in tortillas that had the structural integrity of wet newspaper. Tyler took one bite and made a face. "This isn't food. This is a crime scene." "You're the one who bought it," J-Rod said, tearing into his like it owed him money. "I'm poor, not smart," Tyler shot back. They killed the afternoon at Tyler's ramp, taking turns until the sun dropped low and orange. Tay-Tay tried a kickflip off the ramp and landed it wrong, board shooting out, ankle rolling. He limped for 20 minutes but refused to sit out. J-Rod called him stubborn. Tyler called him stupid. Tay-Tay flipped them both off and kept skating. By the time they rolled back to Miles's place, the sky had gone purple and the first stars were showing. The buffalo across the road moved in slow clusters, their grunts carrying on the evening air. The river whispered silver in the distance, cutting through the fields toward the mountains. They grabbed the stash from its hiding spot, a loose board in Tyler's dad's garage where J-Rod kept a rotating supply of Coors Banquet stolen 3 at a time so nobody noticed. Tonight they had 8 cans, plus a bag of Funyuns, some Doritos, a pack of Big League Chew, and 2 Snickers bars that had melted and re-solidified into brown lumps. "Gourmet dining," Miles said, hauling the sack up the wooden stairs. "You're welcome," J-Rod replied. The roof opened up like always wide and flat, tar paper still warm from the day's heat. The whole valley spread below them like a promise. The Sangre de Cristos cut jagged black shapes against the deepening blue. The buffalo moved like shadows. The air smelled like sage and dust and coming night. Tyler popped the boombox, a chunky Sony with tape deck and radio, covered in stickers from bands and skate companies. He fed it a mixtape he'd made, and Motley Crue's Looks That Kill crackled to life. They cracked beers, foam hissing in the cool air. Miles took a sip and grimaced. It still tasted like piss, but he was getting used to it. Tay-Tay gagged his down, then coughed until J-Rod thumped his back. "Lightweight," J-Rod said. "Shut up," Tay-Tay wheezed. They stretched out on the roof, legs dangling over the edge, boards stacked nearby. Miles's Powell had a Bones Brigade sticker peeling at the corner. Tyler's vision deck had a cracked nose from a failed attempt at the sixth stair. J-Rod's Santa Cruz knockoff was holding together with duct tape and prayers. Tay-Tay's no-name board looked like it had survived a war. For a while they just talked about skating, who landed what, who bailed hardest, whether they'd ever hit the 10 stair behind the post office. About music, whether Metallica or Slayer was heavier, if Twisted Sister counted as metal or just hard rock. About girls, specifically Maria Herrera, who worked at the Allsups and smiled at Tyler every time they came in. J-Rod swore she was just being nice. Tyler swore she wasn't. "You gonna ask her out or just keep buying shitty burritos?" J-Rod asked. "Strategic planning," Tyler said. "Building rapport." "You're building a stomachache." Tay-Tay laughed so hard he snorted beer out his nose. They argued about the Broncos, whether Elway would finally get them to the Super Bowl or choke again. They argued about movies. J-Rod swore The Terminator was the best film ever made. Tyler said it was Ghostbusters. Miles voted for The Thing, and Tay-Tay tried to claim Rocky IV but got shouted down. They argued about whether the new Tony Hawk kid was going to be legit or just hype. The mixtape flipped to Judas Priest. They sang along badly, off-key and loud, voices echoing across the empty fields. Nobody told them to shut up out here. That was the beauty of it. The night deepened. Stars crowded the sky, thick and impossible, layered like someone had spilled glitter across black velvet. The Milky Way cut a bright scar overhead. Miles lay back, hands behind his head, and let himself feel it, the belonging, the ease, the way this place had become home faster than anywhere else ever had. "This is it," he said quietly. "This, right here." "Deep thoughts from the philosopher," J-Rod said, but his voice had no edge. "I'm serious," Miles said. 3 months ago I didn't know any of you. Now this is—" He trailed off, searching for words that wouldn't sound stupid. "Home," Tyler finished. He said it simple, like it was obvious, and maybe it was. The buffalo stirred restlessly across the road. Their bellows came low and uneasy, not the usual evening sounds. The herd shifted, hooves thudding, dust rising even in the dark. Miles sat up, frowning. "They okay?" he asked. Tyler shrugged. "Probably a coyote sniffing around. They spook easy." But the buffalo kept moving, agitated, bunching together. Their grunts carried something that felt wrong, something that made the hair on Miles's neck stand up. "Maybe a bear," J-Rod offered, but his hand tightened on his beer can. The herd settled after a few minutes, though they kept shifting, uneasy. The night went quiet again, broken only by the hiss of the river and the faint crackle of the boombox between songs. Miles told himself it was nothing. Animals got spooked all the time, didn't mean anything. But when he looked toward the river, moonlight glinting silver on the water, he could have sworn something moved against the current, tall and thin, walking where nothing should walk. He blinked, and it was gone. He didn't mention it. The mixtape played on. They finished the first round of beers and cracked the second. Tay-Tay snuck one of the Snickers, and J-Rod caught him, wrestled it away, then split it 4 ways anyway. The chocolate was grainy and weird, but they ate it. Around midnight, J-Rod pitched empty cans at the rusted oil drum in the yard below, each one clanging loud when it hit. Tyler kept score. Tay-Tay tried and missed every time, his throws wild and weak. Miles landed 2 out of 3 and felt absurdly proud. They were good. They were safe. They were kings of their concrete kingdom, and the roof was their castle. It was almost 1 in the morning when the whistle came. At first, Miles thought it was wind. The sound rose high and thin, threading through the valley, steady and hollow. But the air was still, the sage barely moving, and the sound didn't waver like wind would. It rose long and deliberate, like breath through bone. Tay-Tay froze mid-sip beer can halfway to his mouth. "You hear that?" "Coyote," J-Rod said quickly, too quickly. "Coyotes don't whistle," Tyler said. His voice had gone flat. The sound came again, closer now, curling through the night with a patience that felt deliberate. It climbed and held, impossibly long, no breath behind it, no human lungs capable of sustaining that note. The buffalo bellowed in answer, the whole herd suddenly moving, hooves pounding, fence rattling. Dust rose silver in the moonlight. The sound of their panic rolled across the fields like thunder. Miles set his beer down carefully. His throat had gone dry. "What's chasing them?" Nobody answered. The whistle moved, sliding along the river now, that same high, hollow note. The water rippled, though the air was dead still. "Maybe we should go inside," Miles said. Tyler squared his shoulders, jaw tight. "And let whoever's down there think we're scared? No way." J-Rod's eyes flicked to the stairwell, its mouth black and waiting. Tay-Tay pressed close to his brothers, breath coming quick. The whistle rose again, threading the valley, patient and endless. And for the first time all summer, the roof didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a trap. Chapter 2. The Siege Begins. The whistle faded into the trees, but it left something behind, a pressure in the chest, a tightness that made breathing feel deliberate. Tay-Tay pressed closer to his brothers, his beer forgotten, foam drying sticky on the can. The boombox hissed static between songs, and none of them moved to fix it. Without the music, the silence pressed in, heavy and watchful. Tyler cleared his throat, trying to sound steady. "It's nothing. Just some drunk messing around by the river." "Yeah?" J-Rod's voice came too loud, defensive. "You ever hear a drunk whistle like that? Long as a damn train whistle?" Nobody answered. The tape ran out with a mechanical click. Still nobody moved. Miles forced himself to take another sip of warm backwash beer. His stomach turned, but he needed something to do with his hands, needed to look normal. He'd been the new kid long enough to know the rule. First one to show fear was the one who never got invited back. Tay-Tay's voice came small and shaky. "My uncle told me once you never whistle at night, 'cause if you do, it whistles back." "That's bullshit," J-Rod snapped, but his eyes stayed locked on the darkness beyond the roof's edge. "It's true," Tay-Tay insisted. "He said it lives by water. The old ones used to warn about it, said it takes voices and makes them wrong." Miles felt ice slide down his spine. Voices made wrong. That was exactly what the whistle had felt like, stretched too long, held too steady, like something imitating breath without understanding how lungs worked. "Shut up, Tay," Tyler muttered. "You're just scaring yourself." "I didn't make it up." The whistle came again, this time from the direction of the buffalo fields. It rose high and hollow, curling through the night with that same impossible patience. The herd answered with panicked bellows, hooves thundering, the fence rattling under their weight. Dust rose even in the dark, silver in the moonlight. "Jesus," J-Rod breathed. "It's circling us." The house groaned beneath them, wood shifting, settling. Then came a creak from the stairwell, slow and deliberate, the sound of weight on old boards. Miles turned fast, heart hammering. "You hear that?" Tyler was already moving, crawling to the top of the stairs, leaning over to peer down into the black mouth of the stairwell. The smell hit him old smoke, soot, char that shouldn't be there in a refinished house, like the fire had only just gone out. He leaned too far and Miles grabbed his shirt, yanking him back. "Careful," Miles hissed. Tyler pulled back, face pale in the moonlight. Nothing, just the house settling. But his hand shook when he reached for his beer. The creaking stopped. The whistle moved again, closer to the river now. That same patient threading note. The four of them sat in a tight cluster, backs nearly touching, each one pretending not to be terrified. J-Rod tore open another beer, foam spilling over his knuckles. He drank too fast, crushed the can, and hurled it into the night. It clattered off the side of the house, bounced into the yard. "Yeah, you like that?" he shouted into the darkness. "Come on up here, then." "Shut up," Tyler snapped. "You trying to bring it in?" "It's already here," J-Rod said, voice cracking. The silence that followed was worse than the whistle. The house felt brittle beneath them, the roof too thin, the sky too wide and full of stars that didn't care. Then the scratching started. Faint at first, like a dog pawing at a door, nails dragging against wood, slow and methodical, then louder, a steady scrape moving along the siding, circling the house. The boys froze. Tay-Tay whimpered and clapped both hands over his mouth to trap the sound. Something thudded against the wall beneath them, heavy, wet, the sound of meat slapping wood. Then another thud, then another, working its way around the foundation in a patient circle. Miles crawled to the edge, heart slamming against his ribs. He forced himself to look down. At first it looked like driftwood, long, pale shapes leaning against the adobe, catching moonlight. Then he saw them clearly. Bones. A rib cage, vertebrae still attached, propped carefully against the wall. A femur, thick and yellow-white. Another rib section. They weren't falling there by accident, they were being placed. Stacked. He watched as another bone rose into view, lifted by something he couldn't see, positioned with care against the growing pile. The whistle drifted up, soft and satisfied. Miles scrambled back from the edge, face bloodless. "It's building something." "What the hell are you talking about?" J-Rod demanded. Before Miles could answer, Tay-Tay bolted. He lurched to his feet and stumbled toward the far edge of the roof, eyes wide and glassy, breath coming in hitches. "It said my name," he gasped. "It's calling me." "Stay here." Tyler lunged for him, but Tay-Tay twisted away, too fast, too focused on something they couldn't see. Then they all heard it, a voice rising from the darkness, soft and broken. "Tay, Tay." It sounded like Tay-Tay, but wrong. The syllables stretched too long, pulled apart and stitched back together badly, like someone had recorded his name and played it back at the wrong speed. "Don't listen," Miles shouted. But Tay-Tay was already at the edge, leaning over, staring down into the darkness. His lips moved, forming words they couldn't hear. His breath hitched and then he stepped off. Not jumped, stepped, like there was ground beneath him that only he could see. He dropped without a sound, just the scrape of sneakers on tar paper, then nothing. "Tay!" Tyler's scream ripped the night. He threw himself at the edge, leaning over so far Miles had to grab his belt to keep him from following, but there was nothing below, just darkness. Just the hiss of the river, steady and cold. The voice called again, patient and hollow. "Tay." Then silence. Tyler clutched the edge until his knuckles went white. His chest heaved, eyes wet and furious. "He's alive," he whispered. "He's down there. He has to be." "No," Miles said. His throat felt raw. "That wasn't him. You know it wasn't." Tyler turned on him, wild. "Shut up. You don't know." The whistle cut him off, sharp and sudden, right below the roofline. All three remaining boys jerked back. The bones shifted below, clattering as something moved through them. Then came the scraping again, nails clawing up the adobe wall. J-Rod staggered to his feet, fists clenched. His face had gone hard, jaw set. "Screw this," he snarled. "I'm not letting it take another one of us." He grabbed the rusted pipe from the edge of the roof left over from when the house had a second story, a piece of old chimney flue. He gripped it like a spear, knuckles white. "J-Rod, don't," Tyler started. But his brother was already stomping to the edge, pipe raised high. "Hey, you want someone? Come on then, come get me." The scraping stopped. The night went still. Miles held his breath. Then something lashed up from the darkness. It moved impossibly fast, a pale blur, fingers too long, joints bending wrong. It hit J-Rod in the chest with enough force to lift him off his feet. The pipe clattered away, sparking against tar paper. J-Rod screamed, nails raking across his chest as he was yanked toward the edge. Tyler lunged, caught his brother's arm. For one heartbeat, Miles thought he had him. Tyler's grip held, muscles straining, J-Rod's weight pulling him forward. But then J-Rod's skin split where Tyler gripped him, blood slicking everything, hot and dark, and Tyler's fingers slid. J-Rod's eyes went wide, his mouth opened. He reached for his brother one last time. Tyler grabbed for him, caught nothing but blood. J-Rod went over the edge. The fall seemed to last forever. Miles heard him hit not the ground, but something wet, the river. A splash, then churning water, then a sound like meat tearing the cut off with horrible suddenness. Then silence. Tyler collapsed to his knees at the edge, hands covered in his brother's blood. It dripped from his fingers, black in the moonlight, soaking into the tar paper. A sound tore from his chest, half sob, half animal growl. Miles crawled to his side, grabbed his shoulder. Tyler's whole body shook. Tyler, listen to me. We can't go down there." Tyler's eyes burned when he looked up. "It took both of them." His voice broke. "Both of my brothers." The whistle rose again, long and hollow, circling the house in that same patient loop. The bones scraped and shifted below, piling higher, reaching toward the roof. Miles and Tyler pressed their backs together in the center of the roof, surrounded by empty beer cans and abandoned skateboards and the mixtape that had stopped playing hours ago. The boombox sat silent, its batteries dead. Their weapons, Tyler's broken tile, Miles's length of pipe felt useless. The night stretched endlessly ahead. Dawn was hours away, and whatever was out there wasn't leaving. It was building something, and it wasn't finished yet. Chapter 3, The Longest Hours. The roof felt massive and tiny at the same time. Massive because there was nowhere to hide, nothing to put their backs against except each other. Tiny because the edges pressed in, the darkness beyond them absolute, the whistle circling like a patient predator. Miles and Tyler sat shoulder to shoulder in the center, weapons across their laps, eyes burning from refusing to blink. Tyler's hands were still covered in J-Rod's blood. It had dried, sticky and dark, cracking when he flexed his fingers. He kept staring at them like they belonged to someone else. Miles wanted to say something, anything, but every word died in his throat before it could form. What could he possibly say? "Your brothers are gone. We're next. I'm sorry." None of it meant anything. The whistle moved again, sliding along the river with that same impossible patience. One moment it came from the water, the next from the buffalo fields, then from the stairwell, rising from the guts of the house itself. It never stayed in one place, as if the thing making it could be everywhere at once. "Why doesn't it just finish us?" Tyler's voice came out hoarse, barely more than a rasp. Miles didn't answer right away. He was watching the darkness beyond the roof's edge, trying to spot movement, trying to see what was down there. "Maybe it likes this," he finally said. "Maybe it likes us scared." Tyler spat into the dark. "Well, it's working." The scratching started again, circling the house. Nails on adobe, patient, methodical. Then came the thudding more bones being added to the pile. Miles could hear them clicking together, stacking higher. Whatever the thing was building, it was nearly done. A new sound cut through the night. Footsteps, not on the ground, but on the wooden stairs. Slow, deliberate, the creak of weight on old boards, climbing. Both boys whipped toward the stairwell. Tyler grabbed the broken roofing tile he'd used before, edges sharp enough to draw blood. Miles gripped the rusted pipe so hard his palms ached. The footsteps reached the top, stopped. For a long moment, nothing, just breathing their own, harsh and ragged, and something else, wet breathing, labored, wrong. Then a hand appeared at the top of the stairs. Pale, too pale, like something that had never seen sun. The fingers were too long, each joint bending at angles that made Miles's stomach turn. The skin looked stretched thin, cracked like dried clay, dark splits showing something underneath that wasn't muscle. Another hand followed, gripping the tar paper, nails yellow and thick as old horn. Then the head rose. It was narrow, skull-like, the skin pulled so tight across the bones that every ridge and hollow showed through. The eyes were dark pits, wet and reflecting moonlight like oil slicks. No nose, just slits. The mouth hung open, jaw distended, and inside teeth, too many teeth, layered like a shark's, clicking together with each breath. Tyler didn't wait. He swung the tile hard, slashing across the thing's face. Dark liquid sprayed, sizzling where it hit the tar paper, eating small holes. The creature hissed not with its mouth, but from somewhere in its chest, a sound like steam escaping a boiler. It jerked back, disappearing down the stairwell. Nails scraped on wood as it descended, fast, angry. "Did we hurt it?" Tyler gasped. "I don't know," Miles said. His hand shook so badly he almost dropped the pipe. "I don't think so." The whistle came again, but different this time. Two voices overlapping, one high and thin like before, the other deeper, rougher. "Me," the high voice called. Ty Weiler, the deep one, answered. They sounded almost right, almost like their own voices, but stretched, distorted, like listening to yourself on a recording played at the wrong speed. "Don't listen," Miles said. He said it to Tyler, but also to himself. "Whatever it says, don't listen." Tyler nodded, but his eyes had gone distant, glassy, his head tilted like he was trying to hear something just beyond the range of normal sound. "Tyler," Miles grabbed his arm, shook him. "Stay with me." Tyler blinked, jerked back to himself. Yeah, I'm here." But Miles could see it in his face. The thing was getting to him. It had taken his brothers. It had his blood on its hands. Some part of Tyler wanted to go after it, wanted to climb down those stairs and make it pay, even if it meant dying, maybe especially if it meant dying. "We stay up here," Miles said firmly. "We wait for dawn." "And then what?" Tyler's laugh came out broken. "You think sunrise makes this thing go away? You think it's a vampire?" "I don't know what it is," Miles admitted, "but I know going down there is what it wants." The buffalo bellowed across the fields, a rolling thunder of panic. Their hooves pounded, the fence rattled, and Miles caught himself thinking about what his father had once said. Animals that big don't run unless something ancient tells them to, something older than fear, older than instinct, something written into their bones from when the world was younger and things like this walked freely. "My dad told me buffalo carry old spirits," Miles said quietly. "Said they remember things humans forgot." Tyler turned to look at him. "What's that supposed to mean?" "They're scared of it," Miles said. "Whatever's down there, they know what it is. Maybe." He trailed off, idea half-forming. "Maybe what?" Tyler pressed. "Maybe we can use that." Before he could explain, the creature came back. It didn't climb the stairs this time. It came up the side of the house, claws gouging into adobe, pulling itself up with horrible strength. They saw its head first, rising above the roofline, those dark pit eyes fixed on them. Then its shoulders, bones jutting under skin, strings of smaller bones dangling from its neck like jewelry. Its chest came next, ribs visible through translucent skin, and inside things moving, shapes that shouldn't be there, writhing. It hauled itself onto the roof. Fully revealed, it was longer than a man. Its arms and legs bent at extra joints, giving it a spider-like quality, moving in ways that made the eye hurt to follow. The skin was white and cracked everywhere, leaking that dark ichor that sizzled when it dripped. Its head tilted at an angle that should have broken its neck, and the mouth opened wider, those layered teeth clicking in rhythm with the whistle that still somehow poured from its chest. Around its neck and shoulders hung dozens of small bones, finger bones, ribs, vertebrae all strung together, rattling with every movement. It took a step toward them. Tyler screamed and swung the tile. The sharp edge caught the creature's arm, slicing deep. More of that dark blood sprayed, burning holes in the tar paper, but the thing didn't flinch. It backhanded Tyler across the roof. He hit hard, blood exploding from his mouth, ribs cracking with a sound like breaking sticks. "Tyler!" Miles roared. The creature turned its attention to him. Miles drove the pipe forward with everything he had, putting his weight behind it. The metal sank into the thing's chest with a crack, ribs splintering. The creature shrieked, but not with its own voice. It shrieked with J-Rod's voice, then Tay-Tay's, then dozens of others, a chorus of stolen throats all screaming at once. Miles ripped the pipe free, swung again. The blow caught it in the head, snapping its neck to an even worse angle. It staggered, bones rattling, ichor spraying. But it didn't fall. It lunged. Claws raked across Miles's shoulder, tearing through shirt and skin like paper. Fire exploded through his arm, white-hot and blinding. He stumbled, vision going dark at the edges, the pipe slipping from numb fingers. The creature loomed over him, mouth opening impossibly wide, breath like rot and river water. And then the ground shook. The buffalo hit the fence with the force of a freight train. The barbed wire snapped, posts shattering, and the herd poured through an avalanche of muscle and horn. They charged the house, bellowing, eyes rolling white with terror and rage, ancient instinct driving them, old knowledge from when things like this walked openly and the buffalo were the only witnesses. The first impact buckled the adobe wall. Beams cracked, vigas snapping like kindling. The roof tilted under Miles and Tyler, tar paper buckling. The creature shrieked again, all its stolen voices at once, staggering on the slanting surface. The buffalo hit again, and again. The walls collapsed inward, the house folding like a sand castle. Miles grabbed Tyler, hauled him upright. Tyler's eyes were glazed, blood running from his mouth, but he was moving. "Jump!" Miles screamed. They leapt from the collapsing roof just as the structure gave way completely. Miles hit the dirt hard, felt something crack in his chest, couldn't breathe for a moment that stretched forever. Tyler landed beside him, rolled, came up, coughing blood. Behind them, the house came down. The buffalo stampeded through the wreckage, their hooves churning wood and adobe into dust. The creature screamed one final time, a sound like metal tearing, like glass breaking, like every voice it had ever stolen crying out at once. Then the herd drove it into the river. Miles heard the splash, heard the water churn and thrash. The buffalo didn't stop. They trampled through the shallow parts, their hooves striking something over and over, the sickening crunch of bones breaking, the wet sounds of things tearing. The creature's screams doppered away downstream, voices scattering like leaves. Then silence. The herd slowed, milling, snorting. Dust hung in the air, silver in the moonlight that was just starting to pale at the edges. Dawn was coming. The sky to the east had gone from black to deep blue. Miles lay on his back, chest heaving, shoulders screaming with pain, blood soaked through his shirt, hot and sticky. Beside him, Tyler lay staring at the sky, clutching his ribs, wheezing with each breath. Neither of them spoke. They just lay there in the ruins, listening to the buffalo settle, listening to the river flow, listening to their own heartbeats and being grateful they still had them. The first light touched the mountains, painting the sangre de Christos red, blood of Christ. That's what the name meant. Miles had never understood why before. Now he did. The buffalo scattered as the sun rose, their shapes fading into the morning mist. The fence was destroyed, the house was rubble, and 2 brothers were gone. The night had taken more than it gave. But Miles and Tyler were alive. For now. Chapter 4. After. Paige Hondo came back from Colorado 2 days later. He'd been hauling stone from a quarry in Durango, good money for a week's work, and he was bone-tired but looking forward to a shower and his own bed. What he found instead was rubble. The house, his rented house, the one he'd paid cash for every month, was gone. Not damaged. Gone. Reduced to broken adobe and splintered wood, the roof collapsed into the interior. The walls buckled outward like something had exploded from within. The wooden staircase stood alone, leading nowhere, the last piece of the second story that fire had taken a decade ago. His truck rolled to a stop in the dirt lot. He sat there for a long moment, hands on the wheel, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Then he saw the sheriff's cruiser parked in the shade of a cottonwood, and his stomach dropped. Miles was alive. That's what the sheriff told him first, before anything else. Alive, banged up, shoulder torn to hell, but alive. Tyler Loveless, too. Both of them in the hospital in Taos with more stitches than sense. The others, J-Rod and Tay-Tay, were gone. The sheriff's report called it an accident, a buffalo stampede that had panicked and destroyed the house. Unusual, sure, but not impossible. Animals did strange things. The herd had broken through the fence, trampled the structure, and in the chaos 2 boys had been lost. Their bodies were still missing, probably swept downstream when the river flooded during the chaos. Search parties were combing the banks, but the water ran fast this time of year. Might be weeks before they found anything. That was the official story. Clean, simple, closed. Paige didn't believe a word of it. He went to the hospital, found Miles in a room with white walls and the smell of disinfectant and pain. His son's shoulder was wrapped in bandages, the white gauze already seeping pink. His face was pale, eyes hollow, and when he saw his father, he just shook his head. "Don't ask," Miles said. Paige asked anyway. "What happened?" "Stampede," Miles said. His voice was flat, mechanical, like he was reciting lines. "Just like the sheriff said." "Miles, I don't want to talk about it." Paige tried. He tried for 3 days, pushing gently, then not so gently, trying to get his son to tell him what really happened. But Miles wouldn't break, neither would Tyler. The 2 boys had synchronized their story, and they stuck to it with the kind of determination that came from trauma, not deception. So Paige went looking for answers elsewhere. The bar was his first stop, the same bar with the flickering Coors Light sign, half its letters dead. He sat at the scarred wooden counter and ordered a beer he didn't drink, listening. Men talked around him in low voices, and when he mentioned the house, the stampede, his son's injuries, those voices dropped even lower. An old man 3 stools down finally met his eyes. Weathered face, hands like leather, the kind of man who'd lived in Arroyo Seco since before it had a name. "That house should have been gone long ago," the old man muttered into his beer. "What's that mean?" Paige asked. The old man spat into a cup. "Means some places don't want to be lived in. Means fire tried once and couldn't finish the job." "The fire was an accident," Paige said. "Grease on a stove." The old man laughed, sharp and bitter. "That what they told you? Fire started in the walls, friend. Riverside. Burned hottest where it faced the water. Fire crews said they heard voices in the smoke. Voices they recognized, people who'd been dead for years." Paige felt cold settle in his gut. "That's just talk." "Sure it is," the old man agreed. "Just talk. Same as the talk about how that land used to wash up bones after floods. Same as the talk about why the Pueblo people wouldn't build there. Same as the talk about the thing that walks the river when the moon's right. He finished his beer, stood, dropped a few crumpled bills on the counter. Before he left, he put a hand on Paige's shoulder. "Your boy's lucky," he said quietly. "Most folks who spend a night in that place don't see morning. You should thank whatever God you pray to and get him far from here." Then he was gone. Paige tried the general store next. The woman behind the counter was old, gray-haired, eyes sharp. When he asked about the house, she shook her head slowly. "That house burned for a reason," she said. "You don't build where the old water runs. Should have let it finish the job." "What does that mean?" Paige demanded. "Old water?" She wouldn't say more, just rang up his coffee and refused to meet his eyes. He tried the Loveless family, went to their property, knocked on the door, asked to speak to Tyler's father. The man who came out was tall, gray-haired, face like carved stone. He listened to Paige's questions with no expression, then simply shook his head. "It's done," he said. "My boys are dead. Your boy and Tyler are alive. That's all there is." "But what, really?" "It's done," the man repeated, and there was something in his voice that made Paige step back. Not anger, finality, like a door slamming shut. Paige drove back to the ruins, stood there in the wreckage, trying to piece it together. The adobe walls had buckled outward, not inward. The support beams were cracked, splintered, but not from weight, from impact, from something hitting them. The fence across the road was destroyed, barbed wire snapped clean, posts uprooted. And there, in the dust near where the house had stood, were the bones. Not buffalo bones, too small, too delicate, human bones, old ones, yellowed and cracked, scattered through the rubble like they'd been part of the house itself. A femur here, ribs there, vertebrae strung together like beads. Paige picked one up, a finger bone, small, ancient, and it crumbled to dust in his palm. He dropped it like it had burned him. That night he drove to Taos, found a motel, and lay awake staring at the ceiling. In the morning he went back to the hospital and found Miles sitting up, picking at breakfast he wouldn't eat. "We're leaving," Paige said. Miles looked up. "What?" "Packing up, moving. There's work in Santa Fe, better money anyway." "Dad." "We're leaving," Paige repeated. His voice left no room for argument. "End of the week." Miles didn't argue, just nodded and went back to staring at his untouched eggs. Tyler came to say goodbye the day before they left. He looked worse than Miles, ribs still wrapped, face yellow with fading bruises, eyes haunted. They sat on the tailgate of Paige's truck, not saying much. What was there to say? "Your grandfather told me once," Tyler finally said, quiet, "that the house was built on a cut in the river, a bend where bones washed up after floods. Old Pueblo people avoided it, called it a gathering place." Miles waited. "Fire tried to erase it," Tyler continued. 10 years ago, burned so hot the second story was gone in 20 minutes. But they said," he swallowed hard, "they said it started low in the walls, riverside, and that the flames burned blue sometimes, and that the fire crews heard voices. People calling for help in the smoke, but when they looked, there was nobody there." "Why'd they rebuild it?" Miles asked. Tyler shrugged. "Cheaper to refinish than tear down, I guess. My grandfather handled it, thought he could clean it up, make it safe." He laughed, bitter. Guess he was wrong. They sat in silence for a while. The Sangre de Cristos rose purple in the distance, snow still clinging to their peaks even in summer. Somewhere out there, the river ran. Somewhere out there, the buffalo grazed. Somewhere out there, 2 brothers were gone. "You ever gonna tell anyone?" Tyler asked. "What really happened?" Miles shook his head. "You?" "No." Tyler's jaw tightened. "Who'd believe us anyway?" They both knew that was a lie. People would believe them. This was New Mexico, land of brujas and skinwalkers and things that walked when they shouldn't. People here knew that the world was thinner in some places, that old things lingered, they'd believe. But belief wouldn't bring J-Rod and Tay-Tay back, wouldn't erase the sound of Tyler's grip slipping on blood, or the way Tay-Tay had stepped off the roof like he was just going for a walk. Wouldn't change the fact that they'd survived and their brothers hadn't. So they'd lie. They'd stick to the stampede story, and they'd carry the truth like a stone in their chests for the rest of their lives. Miles moved to Santa Fe, got a job in his dad's expanded business, saved money, tried to forget. But some nights he'd wake up to the sound of whistling, high and thin, and he'd lie there in the dark with his heart hammering until he convinced himself it was just wind. Tyler stayed in Arroyo Seco, worked construction with his father, built houses on land that didn't remember anything terrible, but he never went near the river after dark. Never whistled, not even during the day. And every year on the anniversary, he'd visit the ruins, now just a patch of cleared ground with weeds growing through, and sit there until sunrise. The town didn't talk about it. That was the way of small places. Some stories got buried because digging them up helped nothing. The Loveless family held a funeral with empty caskets. The sheriff closed the case. Life moved on because that's what life did, even when it left pieces of you behind. But late at night, when the wind came down from the mountains and the river ran high, people swore they could still hear it, that whistle, high and hollow and patient. And sometimes, if the moonlight hit right, you could see shapes moving against the current, tall shapes, thin shapes, shapes that bent wrong and carried bones like jewelry. The buffalo knew, they remembered, and they stayed far from that bend in the river where the old water ran wrong. Some places refuse to be erased, some fires don't finish the job, some things that should have died a long time ago just keep waiting. Waiting for voices, waiting for laughter, waiting for someone to whistle back. Miles Hondo understood that now, lying awake in Santa Fe, listening to the wind, understood that the thing in the river hadn't died when the buffalo drove it under, hadn't died when the house collapsed. Maybe couldn't die at all. It was still there, still waiting, still building its pile of bones on a foundation of burned wood and bad choices. And someday, maybe not today, maybe not this year, but someday he'd go back, he'd find it, and he'd finish what the fire couldn't. That's what he told himself in the dark. But deep down, in the part of him that still heard Tay-Tay's voice calling from the darkness, in the part that still felt the slick heat of J-Rod's blood on his hands, in the part that remembered the way those pale fingers bent at impossible angles, deep down, he knew the truth. You can't kill something that's already made of death. You can only survive it. And survival was its own kind of haunting. Folklore note. The story you've just heard is fiction, but it's rooted in the real folklore and geography of northern New Mexico. Arroyo Seco exists a small community north of Taos where the Sangre de Cristo Mountains loom and the land still carries the memory of centuries. The region is rich with indigenous Tiwa and Tewa traditions, Spanish colonial history, and stories that blur the line between warning and remembrance. The Pueblo peoples of this area have long held beliefs about places where the spiritual world touches ours more directly. River bends, certain groves, specific rock formations. These are locations where the boundary grows thin, where old things linger. Water, especially moving water, features heavily in these traditions as both a purifying force and a gathering place for spirits. The concept of voices carried on water, of things that mimic human speech to lure the unwary, appears in variations across many indigenous traditions of the Southwest. The practice of whistling at night and the taboo against it is found throughout Native American cultures, including those of New Mexico. The belief is that whistling after dark calls attention from things that are better left undisturbed. What answers your whistle might not be what you want to find. Buffalo, or American bison, do have a presence in northern New Mexico, though their history there is complex. Once numbering in the millions across North America, they were nearly driven to extinction in the 19th century. Today, small herds exist on tribal lands and private ranches. In many plains and southwestern indigenous traditions, buffalo are considered sacred, carrying spiritual significance and ancient memory. Their behavior, particularly unexplained panic or stampeding, has historically been interpreted as a response to spiritual disturbance or the presence of malevolent forces. The image of a bone collector, a creature that gathers and wears the remains of its victims, echoes elements found in various indigenous stories. The Navajo and Apache traditions speak of skinwalkers, witches who wear the pelts of animals and commit acts of evil. The concept of something ancient, dwelling near water, taking voices, and adorning itself with bones feels like a darker cousin to these traditions, perhaps a older thing, something that predates the stories we tell about it. House fires that burn in unusual patterns, that start in walls rather than from obvious sources, that leave behind more questions than answers. These too have their place in the folklore of small towns. Sometimes a fire is just a fire, but in places where the land remembers, where the old stories still get told, people wonder. They look at burn patterns that don't make sense, at sounds heard in smoke, at places that refuse to stay quiet even after being rebuilt. If you visit northern New Mexico, you'll find Taos and Arroyo Seco to be beautiful places, stunning mountain vistas, rich cultural history, art and music and life. The plaza in Taos is real, and skateboarders probably have tried that 6-stair gap. The Sangre de Cristo Mountains are as breathtaking and ancient as described. But ask the old-timers, especially those with roots deep in the land, and you might hear other stories. Stories about places to avoid after dark, rivers that run wrong, sounds that travel farther than they should, and the simple rule: don't whistle at night, because something might whistle back, and you might not like what comes to answer. Sleep tight, boys and ghouls, if you can. Remember the next time you're near running water at night and you hear something that sounds almost like a voice, almost like a whistle, almost like someone calling your name from the darkness. The old ones tried to warn you. Don't answer. This has been Late Night Creature Feature. I'm Mr. Wendigo, and I'll be waiting for you next time. The river remembers, the bones remember, and so do I. End of script. Word count, 10,847 words.